What's up, everybody? I hope you're really enjoying your summer, having a good time, getting a lot done, or whatever. But I have been both having a good time and getting a lot done. So I just wanted to check in, say hi to everybody, and give you all a quick little update. And then do something fun. And that's talk about what I've got up here on the screen, which is something that I posted on Instagram that caused a little controversy between a couple of theory scene heavyweights. That's right, One Dime and David from Theory and Philosophy. For anybody who's not subscribed to David and for Theory and Philosophy, David's got all kinds of great content. He does close readings of texts, shares his results or his summaries, and sometimes his takes. And he's a professor at a university, and so it's good stuff. But with that said, I think he's coming from a very commonsensical position, disagreeing with myself and Tony. It's a very commonsensical position within the niches of academia and leftist activism. But for those who are very critical of academia and leftist activism, as well as the attention economy and the ways that those three things combine, you'll be interested in this whole thing. And it has to do with polyamory, right? And so let's just get straight to it. I'm going to play for you all the little clip here that I posted. So if you look, this is on Instagram. Most of what I post to Instagram is like memes. I just make stupid reels. And some of the stuff though that I post are like, sort of general updates, very important stuff. Like for instance, this plug for the Nature, Nurture, Natality N3 video essay, very big deal here on the channel. Like also I posted something about what I did with Tony, where it's like post left, like what is that? And it's a great conversation here at Theory Underground through the What's Right podcast. But then, as you can see, I also have like dumb shit, like this rare footage of the conversation that led David McKerracher to go study theory and eventually write Timenergy, right?
Yo, how you doing, man? Yo, I'm good, bro. What you been up to? Work. Same, bro. I work too. Yeah, I've just been working at my job, then coming home, and yeah, that's about it. Word. I've been going to work like every day and just working, bro. Same, bro. And I've got a crazy story to tell you. Oh, really? What's up? All right, so the other day at work, I was at work and then some work shit happened and I was like, dude, what the hell? Yo, I feel you, dude. It's like every time I'm at work, I'm, working and then some work shit happens and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? This is work, right? And I accidentally became important at my job. So I'm getting extra work, but not extra money. Ugh, don't get me started on doing extra work at work when I'm only paid to do a certain amount of work. Yeah, and I've been trying to work on myself, but...
So, I have a lot of fun taking great reels and remixing them. So yeah, follow my Instagram, Theory Underground on Instagram. It's right here, Theory-Underground. Anyway, so the other day I posted this though. It's finally available. This is the post-class fractured mass conversation that I had on One Dime Radio. Tony was interviewing me about the PCFM. And this was kind of in the wake of me presenting on it on that panel at the Platypus Convention with Bill Ayers and Doug Lane. So, as well as Higgins, by the way. And so, yeah, this is kind of in the wake of that. The PCFM thesis, it's been crystallizing over the last couple of years as the threads of critical media theory, PMC critique, and also critical doxology and time energy theory. All of these things kind of coming together through this kind of TU school framework has resulted in the PCFM thesis being what it is, which goes through Baudrillard and beyond, right? And so for anyone interested in that, you can always find a few videos that I've done on the topic here at TU, but also, and more importantly, there is this awesome conversation that just took place over on Tony's One Dime Radio podcast channel. And like I said, I've been really busy for the last few weeks. I just got back from a camping trip that also mixed some business. We went to a retreat for Justin Murphy's Other Life community. I was a speaker there. Ann and I presented. I presented with Justin. We'll be releasing a sort of Proto-Agora podcast episode that we did there about the canon, which was fantastic. I had a lot of fun doing that. And it's got me thinking about all kinds of ideas I'm very excited about for our retreat, the tea retreat that's coming up here at the end of September. And so right now we've got a killer lineup of people who will be present. I'm really excited. If nobody else were to sign up, I think it's still going to be a great success just with the current lineup. But I know that a few other people are going to sign up still. And there are a few slots available. And so hoping to see some people there. But since I got back from that trip, I've been super, super, super deep in some secret project. And so I've not been able to tell you all really anything about what's going on because the project that I'm currently working on will not be announced publicly until July 2026. So this is the longest term secret project that I've ever worked on. I'm really excited for the release. But it's something that's going to shake the foundations of the world, And so if you are curious to know what it is, well, then you'll just want to make sure that you subscribe, get involved, go through the back catalog of content, because really what it is it's a logical conclusion and next step forward of taking the theory and practice, the research, the inquiry, and the living life sort of experiment things that I've been doing for the last 10 years and bringing it all together. But the problem with doing stuff and not creating content is that the channel is, it slowly keeps growing, but people are just kind of like, what's going on, And one of my longtime subscribers said yesterday, well, Dave, you don't really got to worry about it. You put out so much stuff. There's a back catalog. People have plenty to keep them busy, whether they are on the free side or on the paid subscriber side. They have just so much stuff to go through. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I shouldn't be stressing the fact that I'm not putting out content. But I wanted to put out a goodie for you all and just let you know I'm alive. And so that's why I'm sharing this. But it's not the only reason I'm sharing this. There is a sort of like clickbaitable sort of like, ooh, look, One Dime and David, like they're having like this disagreement on the TU channel comment section. Yeah. It's not just about clicks, though. It gets to something really deep, close to my heart, and it kind of becomes a sort of demonstration, a practical demonstration of why what we're doing and what I've been doing, especially at TU, like really matters, right? And how it's a big challenge to the doxa of both activism and left academia today. And so, with that said, let's get to it. So I posted this here on Instagram. What is working class anymore? It's just a thumbnail that Tony came up with for the episode that we did, right? But look, if you scroll to the right, then you'll get to hear a clip of the conversation. So I've been talking about things like the family, haven in a heartless world. You got to build loving, real relationships, like talking about things like this. But also most people need to get married. Most people need a reliable, monogamous, committed relationship. Now, that's a strong claim. I could do a whole 12-hour stream on defending it, but I'm not going to right now. All I'm going to say is I think that that's the case. I used to be polyamorous. I tried it out for 2 different phases of my life. They were very, very different phases of my life. And so the first time it was very fuckboy energy. And the second time was very SJW, let's talk about boundaries.
Did I show you this Instagram page called Decolonizing Love?
No. And so first of all, I just want to say that this is not actually in the conversation that I did with Tony on the topic of the post-class fractured mass. This is in a sort of B-side for his patrons only. And so first of all, there's that. And so not only is this a sort of teaser for what's beyond the paywall over at One Dime Radio, go check out his Patreon and get involved if you want to be able to access it. But it's also obviously sensational, clickbaity, especially for his audience, which is largely leftist. And so he took clips from the second part of the conversation that is paywalled, put it at the front end of the public part. And so I clipped that because it is, it gets your attention, right? And so that is why I shared that here. And so with that said, it is obviously a controversial sort of part of the conversation that we were having, at least for some people, as you'll soon see here down below. But I'll keep it going.
Instagram page called Decolonizing Love.
No, no.
My friend sent
Oh,
me this
no.
shit. And I thought it was a parody. It looked like a fucking parody making fun of polyamory, but
And I was like, oh no, here in the conversation, right? But I actually, I'm not sure if in that moment I remembered that this is an Instagram page that I have seen, and that's why I was saying, oh no, like oh, you've seen that too, or if I'd forgotten about this page. But I have seen it. I've seen that page, I think, a few times since 2020. So I've seen it over the years, and it's unbearably cringeworthy. So I think that is why I'm going, oh no. But we'll keep going.
it's like a real thing
No.
that teaches people how to be polyamorous and like how to conduct themselves. And it looks like a parody, but it's called Decolonizing Love. And it's like, so if with your third boyfriend or your third girlfriend, it's like set the boundaries here and make sure that the other person doesn't get it is all this cope to get around the fact that like human nature ain't built for this, bro.
But I'll just say my position, like basically with all of this, and this is kind of what I keep trying to convey to people who are giving me all this pushback on the whole marriage thing. Okay, if you are the extreme exception for whom this is not true, then traditionally, so I've been talking about things like the family, haven in a heartless world. You got to build.
And so that's pretty much all I really need to play from there. And I'll show you the disagreement that ensues in a moment, but I'll go ahead and pull up here on the screen Decolonizing Love so you can see what I'm talking about. So, I think it's primarily these two people. The people we're privileged to support as polyamory coaches, a parent grappling with how to come out as polyamorous to their 8-year-old daughter and teenage son. They literally talk about this like you're coming out as gay. It's fucking insane. An anxiously attached individual questioning whether their needs in polyamory are too much or if they're experiencing neglect. Am I just too needy or is it neglect? Oh my God. I guess one of the big reasons that I have such low tolerance for all of this discourse, not only is it like a new kind of hyper niche virtue hoarding sort of PMC progressive like inherently alienating and divisive extreme marginalization victimology kind of narrative and ideology that's being rolled out by people who want to act like they're victims just because they want to slut around, but also like they're lording it as though it's like it's moral. It's like they're doing the morally better thing. And so yeah, a triad working to dismantle the couple's privilege held by two members of the triad. Oh no. Oh, two of the people in the triad have more privilege than the other one. How are we going to navigate this? I guess we'd all better sit in a circle and hold hands and do some deep breathing exercises and then talk about our traumas and our boundaries for 3 hours. And then we'll have to do it again 4 days later because we'll find out that the gray area that we're navigating has constant goalposts that are moving because, this shit's complicated and it just gets more and more complicated. I mean, anybody who's ever had a successful, like, monogamous relationship already knows how complicated it is. Add another person, you're talking about infinite complications, right? You're not just talking about two people who have different hormone cycles and sort of mood ranges and, sort of mode distributions across a given month to year. You're also all of a sudden not just adding two family histories and we're compounding that. We just like literally like open the gates and then everything is sexualized all of a sudden. I know a lot of poly people are going to have a problem with me saying that, but it's true. It adds like this sexual undertone to everything. Poly people that I meet, they're always like it's not necessarily like a public display of horniness, but it often has like this, like, oh yeah, we're kind of like always looking for partners. We're open to it, And I understand that like with gay people, some people get this idea that gay people are always horny and always looking for something, and that, you know, you'll have homophobic dudes who are like, oh, like every gay guy wants to get with me or whatever. But it's more true. It's way more true with poly people. In my experience, which is not limited and not new, it's actually, I've got an embarrassingly large amount of experience in that world. And I fucking hate it, man. At this point, I'm just totally like, total waste of my time. I mean, I guess I learned things, but come on. Yeah, so these are these people. Here, we
egalitarian polyamory when you're nested with one partner?
hold on.
How can you truly practice egalitarian polyamory when you're nested with one partner? I love this question because it has been the bane of our polyamory dynamics.
Capitalism is real. Nick and I live together because we had to. Toronto is one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. We live in a society designed with monogamous couples in mind, so most housing is designed for singles, couples.
I can't even. Anyway, so let's go ahead and read the comment here. So David from Theory and Philosophy comes along and says, y'all aren't really out here suggesting marriage more closely approximates human nature than polyamory, right? It's just that I haven't yet seen the full video, right? You're not really suggesting that, are you? Yeah, David, totally. That is exactly what we're suggesting. Though, of course, not in a dumb way. We can obviously back up what we're saying. But I'll come back to how Tony responds, and then also how I responded, and then David's response right after I roll this studio update and fundraiser. So enjoy. TU is building a studio. I have officially cleared ground. I've been working on it for the last several months on and off, but am, as of this last week, beginning to get a lot more traction on the project because more money has come in. So thank you so much for those who have already contributed via donations for the TU studio. It's going to happen no matter what, but the question is when. If you want to help speed up the process, make things smoother sailing, and help me keep creating the kinds of content that you love, and even better, the kinds of content that is to come. There's a whole new era getting rolled out. If you want to help make it possible and usher it in smoother and faster, the best way to do that is to make a donation via the Zelle link up on the screen here. You see that QR code? Use that QR code. Once you have an account, that QR code should take you to where you can make the bank transfer with zero charge, which is really sweet, huh? Yeah, we love that. That's why we're using Zelle. Thank you so much for helping make this possible. And we're back, baby. So welcome back. Good to have you here. And so let's get into it. David goes, y'all aren't really out here suggesting marriage more closely approximates human nature than polyamory, right? It's just I haven't yet seen the full video, right? And so Tony comes in and says, when I, Dave, or most people for that matter, talk about human nature, we are referring to the general tendencies in human behavior that have existed now and in modern history, not human nature in some trans-historical sense. In the grand scheme of things, monogamy is actually the exception, not the rule of human societies. But whether something is natural or not does not make it good. Sorry, I lost my place here. Yeah, but I love this point that he's making because, I actually make it in the Nature, Nurture, Natality N3 video, the N cubed video. David, if you're watching this, make sure to check that out. It's, a relatively long video essay, but if you're only going to watch one thing I've made in the last, 5 years, that would be the thing to watch for sure. Definitely will give you a better sense for where I'm coming from with all this. And I'm not sure that that's the same place that Tony's coming from, but it's definitely worth checking out. I sign off on it I endorse it wholly. That's why I made it. Anyway, he says, but whether something is natural or not does not make it good. And just because hunter-gatherer societies many centuries ago had polyamorous societies does not mean that polyamory works for most people today's context, nor is it a great idea to push when pretty so much of human life is subject to capitalist market relations. Or I guess he said, it's a bit of a misspelling, but he just means pretty much all of life is subject to capitalist market relations. So things are going to be a little different in our context today than for a supposedly polyamorous hunter-gatherer society. First of all, I just really want to quick throw out there, we don't know a lot about hunter-gatherer societies from millennia ago, right? We primarily know about ones that currently exist, and they often exist as some kind of a reaction to large states and civilizations. And so what we don't have access to is this idea of a prehistoric man. And what is a weird thing that people will often do when they try to naturalize the thing that they think is right and natural for humans to do is they'll look to currently existing reactive niche little tribal societies that are usually, not literate, not living with toilets and air conditioning. And then they'll like try to take those dynamics and project it onto the past to thousands and thousands of years ago and be like, that's how people lived back then. And then they'll go, oh, see, so that tells us how we should live now. And that's obviously not what we're doing. And that is what a lot of poly people do, which is what Tony's responding to here. Then he says, point being, human societies have changed a lot throughout history. And does that mean you can successfully import social practices from thousands of years ago in a completely different context to the societies that we have now? I just want to point out that we don't have proof that most prehistoric human societies were poly. What we do have proof of is that most societies that can be observed or read about had men controlling women, and usually, or if not controlling, at least, marriage or partnering was kind of based on a man having a woman or multiple women. Not like, oh, we're all going to share all the women, right? Like that's always been taken to be a utopian idea since Plato and Aristotle kind of made fun of it. And so, you obviously get people, especially incels on the internet, who think that they are entitled to love, who will want some kind of a society that just makes it so that they are able to get their share of pussy or whatever. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. But I would say it's as disgusting as the kind of guy who wants to have a whole bunch of wives so that other guys in the society have to go unloved, and single. Right. And that's one of the big problems with both polygamy as well as polyamory. I know people will often look at it's more exploitative of women. Those women don't really have freedom. And I think that that's fine from an egalitarian standpoint. But I want to talk from the level of like what actually can work in any kind of civilization. And obviously like a civilization where it's going to be the rich men who get to have a whole bunch of wives. What we're talking about is a whole bunch of guys not being able to have partners, not being able to find love. And so monogamy is a kind of compromise that allows people to partner. And I like how G.K. Chesterton says, some people are upset with the idea of monogamy because it binds you down to one person. And he thinks, really, I'm just happy and blessed to be able to be with a woman. I think that's amazing. Like, shouldn't that be enough that I actually get to have a loving relationship with a woman? Isn't that great? That should be great. And I would also then add, isn't it even better that it has evolved as an institution? It has evolved to continuously compromise. It is an institution of compromise, if we want to think of it as an institution. It is based on the contradiction between the sexes. It is based on the contradiction between sex and love, or lust and love. It mediates a lot of different contradictions, and it does so in a way that is really good for people, as long as those people believe in it and believe in putting it and their children and the society that they live in first and foremost, above and beyond their own individual pleasure and freedom. because once again, it's an institution of compromise, and it is about growing up and sacrificing somewhat. And so, if you believe in that, then it's going to be good. But if you instead believe that love is like just an expression of feeling a whole bunch of feelings for somebody, and then those feelings go away, and you also believe that divorce is a natural thing to do when those feelings go away, well, then it's not going to go so well. All right. It's not going to go so well. But, that's not just my opinion. I've got books I like to reference on these things. I think the book Get Married is really good. He talks about the sharp decline in marriage as well as the rise in the divorce rate. And he talks about a lot of the reasons, and he talks about how this is disproportionately bad for the working class, and how the people who tend to talk down on marriage and kind of mock it or ridicule it or kind of just play it down like it's a naive kind of thing are often in the class that benefits from marriage. So they put it down while at the same time functionally and behavioristically believing in it. And the working class gets duped by buying into this. Oh, it's just a social construction, and I can just, whatever. I can just not get married, or I could just, if I'm just not feeling the feelings for a few weeks or months, then I can just get divorced. And the pop culture, Hollywood, it's made light, not just love, but especially marriage. And if you think about it, it's really hard to find good romance movies, right? It's really, 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 really hard. Most romance movies are about breakups, are about love not working out. It's hard to find like a good relationship. Probably the best marriage that comes to mind for me, just off the top of my head, would be, I don't know, Ned Stark and is it Catalina? Is that her name? I'm not sure, but the Stark couple from Game of Thrones, because like they have virtue and courage and loyalty. The Stark family. They're the good guys, to a fault. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, all right. So in response to what Tony said there, I said, great way of putting it, Tony. Yes, David, this is more or less how I would see it, though I don't tend to use the term human nature myself unless I'm speaking to an audience of people who use that term. It tends to create more confusion than is worth dealing with in an audience schooled in critical theory. Not because those people schooled in critical theory have a superior perspective, but because they commonly take human nature to mean a transhistorical, immutable, and prescriptive thing, as opposed to what I see it as, which I'll explain here in a second. But I want to go back to transhistorical, immutable, and prescriptive. For people like who go, wow, those are big words. What do those mean? Transhistorical means true across all historical time. Immutable means it's like, this is how it always is. And then prescriptive means it's like telling you, thou shalt be this way. So there are people who are pro-monogamy who are that way, and there are people who are poly or also down with polygamy who will be that way. They'll say, this is the way for humans across all time. It is the right thing to do. It's an approach to using the term human nature that is often ideologically loaded and therefore overly complicated to use in casual conversation, which is why, as I said, I often won't use it. Okay, but how do I see it though? When I do actually use it, what am I saying? I said it is something between biology and our desire to counter and harness the biological for the sake of larger scale civilizational ideals. Really, ideals in general, which I think of as the wondrous discovery we can use to counter and harness our appetites and passions for rising above our worm, reptile, and primate levels of being towards something beautiful, just, and good. Right? Now, I could have added, also pigs in there, right? It's not just worms and reptiles and primates. Humans can also act a lot like chickens or pigs or cows. There's all kinds of ways that humans, when they're not rising towards ideals in a society that upholds virtue, will start to appear more and more like certain animals who maybe that's their natural habitat and that's how they ought to be, but it's not really us rising to our best, right? So yeah, I think the discovery of philosophy, the discovery of the humanities, of the beautiful, the just, and the good, as well as obviously truth, I think that that's important. It's important, and it is part of what de-wormifies us. It deworms us, right? It doesn't just deworm us or deprimate us. It actually lifts us towards something higher, towards angels, towards the divine. Whether you want to say that the divine is metaphysically real, it is obviously pragmatically real. So we'll keep going. Another way of saying that is that institutions in a mass scale civilization, when working well, must maintain norms and laws that nurture nature and cultivate culture in a way that will work for tending and uplifting at least most people. What works for very small scale and primitive societies. What worked or works for very small scale and primitive societies is not necessarily going to work in ours, especially not when time energy has been structurally stultified and reduced to labor power. The only people with the cultural capital and relative time energy privilege to spend their lives navigating poly relationships are the very people who have historically tended to live off the necessary labor of everyone else while lording their supposed virtues and refinement over those who are too busy for such things. This further drives the cultural rift between the priest class and populace, which has in the 20th century only reached new levels of complexity and justified resentment with the rise of the PMC and its schooling system and media dominance used to perpetuate our existing relations of production. I see the turn towards super unrealistic and non-mainstreamable lifestyles like poly as part and parcel to all this. And I'm embarrassed I was seduced by it, though in retrospect, I think it had less to do with reason than a convenient rationalization of my promiscuity. I'm with Studebaker on the need to go beyond eros, and I think the fixation on liberating it was a trap for the new left that has, in part, hindered the rise of something new that has a legitimate shot at overcoming the deadlocks of our day. So, I couldn't have said it better myself. Shit. Oh, I did say that. Not only did I say that, I said that 5 days ago. I'm still waiting for David's response. Something that I kind of find really like I don't know. It makes me feel weird about the internet is how easy it is to post something that requires a lot of time and energy to even come to like the realization that it's true or worth saying. Then you say it, and then it's so easy for people to come along and ask a question of it that seems like, you know, a legitimate question. But then if you actually humor it and give a well thought out answer, you instead get no actual response, right? And so I hope, David, that you are working on something that seriously engages with my response, because my response here is something that I really thought a lot about for like, I don't know, 12 to 24 hours. I don't know if I slept on it or not, but I think I did it the same day that I saw your comments. But it's like, it took me away from my work. It took me away from everything I was doing, and I gave it everything I had. And I tried to present it in a respectful way so that you understand where I'm coming from. So yeah, I do look forward to a response. Yeah. And then with that said, David did respond to Tony. And so let's go to where he responded to Tony. I think he responded to Tony in a separate thread by accident. He said accidentally hit enter too early, hence the delete. So yeah, it ended up coming out in its own sort of standalone thing here. So in response to Tony, he says, is polyamory a relic of the past? Really? And are you really suggesting that monogamous marriage works for most people in today's context? That's a supremely intellectually dubious claim, given that approximately 50% of monogamous marriages don't last. Man. Let's talk about intellectually dubious. The last 70 years of Hollywood has portrayed stereotypes of dads that make men like worthless bumpkins, and then stereotypes of women that make them just sex objects, and then constantly giving people the idea that marriage is just about feeling a bunch of ooh-wooey feelings, as opposed to being about a sacrifice of pleasure and freedom for the sake of something more important. You know, the feelings matter, but also it's about a sacrifice for something more important, which would be natality, you know, bringing new life into existence, whether that's an actual child or some kind of a bigger creative project or something. But the idea is like partnership in the much more noble sense, not just like in the, oh, we're partners because we have bills together, but it's more like we're partners because we have a mission in life. There's something that matters here. It's the good. It might be God. It might be philosophy. It might be a political vision, but it's something that matters and requires sacrifice and effort and teamwork. And children are obviously the more literal example of natality, but you also have like these more figurative examples of natality, being towards birth, right? That's what we're talking about. Anyway, so to say that, you know, 50% of monogamous marriages don't last, well, yeah, because people believe divorce is a solution for marriage that doesn't have the ooh-wooey feelings, or where people start to feel stifled in terms of either their freedom or they're not maxing pleasure anymore, and so they want to try something else, and they feel some chemistry with somebody, and then they're like, oh, I see this as a sign, I just need to move on. And it's like, well, people getting married for the wrong reasons. And if a society isn't generally supporting and uplifting and organizing around working with and for parents, well then yeah, you're going to see these kinds of problems, of course. Anyway, then he says, and isn't the fact that it ostensibly works in this context only a sign that it is good bedfellows with turbocharged 21st century capitalism? Do y'all make any mention of Engels / Marx's reflections on the exploitative nature of monogamous marriage? No, it wasn't like we had a really deep, long conversation about this. I think it would have been a natural place to go, considering the fact that we both have familiarity with Marx. And so, of course, we would have brought in Engels with his work on, you know, the origin of state and family. But also, like, that was based on really dumb anthropology. And it was also just like totally leftist pilled. Like it's just it made sense back then. It doesn't make sense anymore. Like the exploitative nature of monogamous marriage is something that is culturally relative and historically contingent based on when and where we're talking. And then even when we're talking about something like, say, ancient Rome or Greece or whatever, it's like you got to think about, yeah, but what was their situation? What did they kind of take for granted? It's a very complicated thing. We're talking about today, though, and, you know, marriage is something that is not just manageable within a large-scale civilization, whether it's capitalist or not. It's also something that does benefit people. Though, doesn't that make it bedfellows to capitalism? Sure, it could, but also the number one tendency of capitalism is to turn everything solid into air, erode and destroy cultural tradition, heritage, you know, these traditional institutions, and ultimately do so for the sake of reducing people to labor power and measuring them up against the law of value, and this sort of isolating, atomizing, self-valorizing process that turns everybody into adult children, man children, girl childs, like whatever, like the, you know, 35-year-old virgins who are addicted to porn, playing video games is exactly what this stage of capitalism wants. It doesn't want people who are sacrificing for something bigger and better that requires, you know, the kind of team effort of a husband and wife, or potentially other forms. You know, we could talk about gay marriage and stuff like that, but how often does that reify the dumb version of marriage that is really just like, oh, well, you know, if you like each other a lot, then this is what you do. And it's like, geez, man, it's just, I believe that exceptions can prove the rule, and that people can have deeply meaningful and committed monogamous relationships, even if they're not heterosexuals, and I know of a couple, but I'm just saying how much of this culture has just kind of turned even heterosexual marriage into gay marriage, right? You have a man and a woman, but they're not seriously thinking about creating new life. And even adopting. They're not even seriously thinking about adopting anymore. It's like, come on, guys. You can't just make a community with people who are your age. You have to be a part of intergenerationality, right? Anyway, also, what's with this? Come on, David. This saying y'all. You're not Southern, man. And I know that this is just like a thing that people do in these uber progressive spaces, but we're guys. You can just say, do you guys make any mention of Engels / Marx's reflections? Not this, do y'all? Anyway, I'm wearing suspenders and I'm not even going to say do y'all. Come on. It's super strange to lionize monogamous marriage in such a way as to offer it as any sort of antidote unless y'all are more interested in separating yourselves from those SJW poly folks than maintaining steadfast in our mutual struggles against capitalism and its offshoots, including monogamous marriage. Oh, so capitalism is just like monogamous marriage now, and we should be trying to fight it. He says, I'm chiming in so deliberately in direct proportion to what I perceive to be an absurd and reactionary argument, but maybe listening to the whole thing will dispel my confusion. Well, David, thank you for being charitable and keeping in mind that we might actually be saying what you think we're saying, which we kind of are, but also because you're not steel manning us and you're not trying to really understand where we're coming from and you're not really responding to what we're actually saying. I'm not actually sure that this sort of like, hey, maybe if I watched it in its entirety, that'd be enough. I mean, we already kind of explained ourselves, so I think that should be sufficient. You don't actually have to watch the whole conversation. But also, you know, I think that there's a lot more to it, as my big response had already kind of said, right? And so I'm going to come back with Tony's response to that as soon as I play, I'll play this. Hate to interrupt, but we would be remiss to not share an advertisement from our sponsors. And we're not sponsored by any corporate or state entities other than ourselves. So I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the past courses and the ongoing courses here at TU. Because if any of them sound exciting to you, well, you can access all of them by becoming a subscriber. That's right. Subscribers make all of this possible. Subscribers get access to the course I taught on Martin Heidegger's Being and Time, as well as the course that I taught the first half of last year, Emmanuel Levinas's Totality and Infinity, the second half for which I will be teaching this winter. I've also taught Critical Media Theory and Critical Doxology and Timenergy with my wife, Anne Snellgrove McKerracher, who is the co-host on What's Right. Also, you would get access to the course I taught at the university, 3 semesters worth, on Intro to Critical Social Theory and Socioanalysis. But also, we've had lots of other great professors teach Introduction to Marxism by Chris Catrone, Intro to Lacan via Seminar 11 with Todd McGowan, Introduction to Ivan Illich with Brian Weeks, The Clinical Structures of Psychoanalysis and Autism with Dr. Leon Brenner, the Michael Downs Seminar, Introduction to Slavoj Žižek, Introduction to Nick Land, and Žižek's For They Know Not What They Do, all taught by Michael Downs, as well as What is Sex? There was a collab that I did with Cadell Last, Theory 101, a collab I did with Hello Gorgias. And then also, of course, there's Carl Jaspers' Is the Idea of the University, PMC Consciousness and Ideology. These were early, very important courses that I taught with friends at TU back in 2023. And they remain important to this day. Every one of these courses comes out of an overarching research project. There's a real driving force, mission, and agenda to the research going on at TU because we want to understand the situation for the sake of large-scale structural change focused on the good life. What does that actually mean? If you really want to go deep, obviously, these courses are something you could spend the better part of a year binging. while at work. Ongoing courses that come out on a monthly basis are the Fundamental Problems and Core Concepts at TU with yours truly, also my seminar, Philosophy of Nature with Nina Power, the Benjamin Studebaker seminar, as well as his course, The 12 Political Theorists. We've got some really exciting stuff coming down the line. The only way to make this all possible and really deepen your knowledge and familiarity with all of these different things is to become a subscriber today at http://theoryunderground.com/subscribe. Thank you. All right, so I'm back, and yeah, thanks for sticking around past the ad. I guess it's an ad, but you know, it's very important, the stuff that we're doing here. The back catalog at Theory Underground is rich and thought-provoking, and you're going to learn a lot. And so I don't feel bad promoting it, especially considering the fact that we are not just out here being like influencers. I'm not just a micro celeb doing influencership. I'm not just putting out video essays or whatever. It's like, no, we've got courses. I've brought on a whole bunch of people to teach me, and anyone who's kind of a cohort that's with me, like you get to learn a lot of stuff from Benjamin or Nina or anybody who's taught in the past here at TU. And I've taught a whole bunch of courses. I love it. It means a lot that there are so many people currently signing up. I really appreciate it. Okay. Well, with that said though, let's keep going. So first of all, Tony says, why do you talk as if poly folks are some kind of oppressed group? All we did is state our opinions on it. I don't give a fuck if they don't like it. Laughing emoji. So yeah, or he said, I don't give a fuck. I don't know if that was a purposeful misspelling or not, but yeah, they're not an oppressed group, or at least not oppressed enough, in my opinion, right? Like, and what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, like people are trying to act like poly people are the new black people, or the new gay people. Oh, I'm coming out as poly. Trying to act like poly people are the new trans or the new disabled. Come on, guys. I get it. I get it. Like the PMC jobs are scarce, and so you got to do what you can to stack your little CV or whatever. But give me a break. And so I'm 100% with Tony on this one. But when I say they're not oppressed enough, what I mean is like, yeah, I'm sorry, but like people just like openly brainwashing children and telling them that this can work when obviously it requires tremendous amounts of time and energy that only works for an extreme fringe of people in the developed Western world is so absurd. It's so absurd. And it only works for like a sort of soy pilled kind of guy, right? And the kind of women who usually like to exploit those kinds of guys. That's it. That's it. It only works within super, super reactive feminist bubbles where people think that any sign of ownership or property or hierarchy or privilege or really commitment that would favor one person over others is somehow like inherently oppressive, right? It's just the worst. And so when I say they're not oppressed enough, it's like, yeah, it's because I think it should be taboo. It's not taboo enough. People are just talking about it like it's like the new thing. And I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. Like actually fuck off. I'm not interested in sitting around having those conversations anymore. I was doing it 10 years ago. But I just kind of I don't care. I don't care. And so saying I don't care or I don't give a fuck if they don't like it is not probably exactly true. It's like we do care, but also we don't want to humor it, I think is the point. But I'll let Tony speak for himself. Anyway, so then here is the response from David. He says, not going to lie, I find this to be quite a surprising response, Tony, especially the I don't care if they don't like it angle. Decolonizing love is a great resource, just like what One Dime and Theory Underground offer. What? David, that's like the biggest insult you could have possibly made, but all right. Why do they not deserve respect? Okay, well, for the reasons already given, I guess, in my response. But anyway, we'll keep going. Tony said, LOL, I'm not calling for anyone to get canceled or whatever, which, by the way, Tony, come on. It's not like David said that. Then he says, unlike some of the people who tend to support of this sort of thing. That's true, though. A lot of the poly people are pretty sort of cancel hungry, sort of, borderline personality types. Then he said, I never mentioned any people's names. I just think that polyculture is a funny fad, and I explained why. That's all there is to it. Hands up. Maybe that's like a shrug emoji. I can't tell. I think that there was more to this conversation. I think that maybe something got deleted. I'm not sure who deleted what, but I thought I saw other stuff to this. So, go ahead and let me know if either of you guys said something more that got deleted. I don't know. So I made another comment and accidentally it wasn't in the right thread. So I then tagged David to make sure that he saw it. So I did the same thing he did, which was kind of commenting outside of the thread. Look, Instagram's not a place for real discourse, guys, but because I have always thought what David is doing over at his channel is cool, I did humor him with a serious response, even though it's just a comment section on Instagram, not the place for dialectics, let's say. But because it happened there and not, for instance, in a real conversation on his channel or on Tony's channel, I thought I would raise it to everyone else's awareness out here in YouTube land because, come on, Tony, David, me, our people are mostly on YouTube, not Instagram. And if we're going to talk about this publicly, why are we talking about it in an Instagram comment section? Why can't we just talk about it like real people on a live stream on one of our channels? Like that should be a thing. So if you guys are down, I'm down to host it, or come on your channel or whatever. But I think it's a conversation that should happen. So anyway, I said, hey, David, it's not about dragging poly people. What follows is what I wrote before lunch, which after eating, I realized you had already responded to Tony. I'll still share it because I don't have time to edit anew and everything still stands with a caveat, as in, if you're not inferring something about small scale societies or our bonobo nature are instead weirded out that this even came up, just be advised it's a recurrent argument that anyone who has circulated much through these communities should be familiar with, in part thanks to books like Sex at Dawn, which has had a huge impact on the culture. And so that's the thing, is like David must be pretty new to what they call consensual non-monogamy or polyamory, because the Sex at Dawn book is the major reference that people bring into conversation when talking about the supposed naturalness of poly and the way that it is just better, prescriptively. It's the book Sex at Dawn, which basically says, oh, we've always thought of ourselves as like kind of being like chimpanzees that are so warlike and that makes us bad. But we're actually more like bonobos genetically, and bonobos, they're poly. They share things. Yeah, they still end up ripping each other apart, shreds and fighting. They're less aggressive than chimpanzees. And so like this, it's kind of cool. Like if you really do kind of think of yourself as a chimpanzee, I suppose it's good to know that there are other kinds of primates that are less vicious. And so Sex at Dawn, raises that to one's awareness, but does so while being like, this is what we are like, and therefore it's how we should be. And so Tony liked that. I don't think David liked it. But he hasn't responded either way. And then I said, oh wait. Yeah, oh, so this was just me kind of saying after the fact, after posting this one, the one I already read. the one where I said, great way of putting it, Tony. Yes, David, this is more or less how I would see it, though I don't tend to use the term human nature myself unless I'm speaking to an audience of people who use that term. It tends to create more confusion than is worth dealing with in an audience schooled in critical theory, blah, 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 blah. Once again, I'm not saying things in terms of a transhistorical, immutable, and prescriptive approach to human nature, but I'm instead talking about human nature as a way of mediating between biology and our desire to counter and harness that biological for the sake of larger scale civilizational ideals like beauty, justice, and the good, right? And then I'm going to reiterate all of this just because I want to close out, and I want to, in closing out, really make sure that my point here sticks, because I put a lot of thought into it. And so I said, another way of saying that is that institutions in a mass scale civilization, when working well, must maintain norms and laws that nurture nature and cultivate culture in a way that will work for tending and uplifting at least most people, right? So I think I say at least most because I don't think that something has to work for everybody to be just and good. I think that there's like this weird sort of end of history liberal approach that often can be somewhat leftist in its rhetoric and assumptions, but it'll like basically act like if it doesn't work for everybody, it must be oppressive, and therefore it must be bad, and therefore it must be gotten rid of. And it's like, well, I really don't have problems with oppressing a minority of people if it literally works for most people, and the alternative is chaos, mass loneliness, declining birth rate, etc., right? Though, of course, I will come back with a different video in the future where I say I'm not so sure about this whole declining birth rate thing. It keeps coming up on my channel, but I'm not convinced it's as big a problem as, for instance, Malcolm and Simone Collins make it out to be, for reasons I'll get into. But even then, it's like it does matter that people are comfortable with castration of children, comfortable with castration, even at the age of 20. It's like you're going to regret that when you enter your 30s. Like the odds are high that you're going to regret that in your 30s. And there's been like this weird progressive PMC thing about population control, eugenics for a long time. And, it's the idea that if you have a family, you deserve poverty. If you have children, you deserve your poverty. Oh, she's poor because she had a child early. Instead of being like, oh, our society doesn't support people having children. Our society doesn't support people who are trying to build a life together and want to live in a home, right? And so that's why you'll find these sort of culturally conservative social democracy sort of approaches like Patrick J. Deneen and Why Liberalism Failed, or that book I mentioned earlier, which I'll go ahead and pull up here, or it's called Get Married. And it's, so he's a sociologist. He draws off of a ton of statistics for people who like that kind of thing. His name is Brad Wilcox, and the subtitle of that book is Why Americans Must Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization. But with that said, I'm not saying that you're dumb or necessarily wrong for not having children. And of course, not everybody can. But you should be thinking about how that is not only a legitimate calling, but also it is probably the path most people need in order to have a good life, one that they find fulfilling. As David said, the divorce rate has gone up, and it's like 50% right now, and that's pretty crazy. But it's also indisputable that people on their deathbeds wish that they had spent more time with family, wish that they had spent more time with their children, found having children to be the most meaningful thing that they did with their lives, far, far, far beyond and above any career success that they might have attained. Yeah. Feminism Beyond Progress by Mary Harrington is also a really good book on this. Obviously, Louise Perry's book, Against the Sexual Revolution. Those are really, really good books that's kind of where I'm coming from. But I take it further with time energy theory, with professional managerial critique, with critical media theory, with the idea of the post-class fractured mass. So for me, it goes a lot further. There's a lot of stuff I'm working on right now behind the scenes that will go much more in depth into all of this. I don't tend to get into the comment sections much and try to avoid getting sucked into that kind of thing. Like my recent Substack post that got a lot of responses, and I just haven't been able to respond because it's like I'm busy, and if I go ahead and write somebody an essay, it's highly likely that that little essay that I write is gonna just not even be taken seriously, not get read by anybody. And so here's an example. I said, and this is related to what we're talking about. I said, right-wing critiques of capitalism get a bad rep, but most left-wing critiques are just, it's not fair, or everyone should be represented in decision-making. The fact is that there are quality critiques of left and right, but neither trickles down to the culture of activism or larger movements. And people are generally reactive and stupid about both markets and wealth, which are necessary and good, respectively. I got all these responses, and it's mostly people not getting where I'm coming from, assuming I'm coming from somewhere I'm not coming from, or just kind of asking me to lay out something. Like they're like, okay, tell me about one of these good right-wing critiques of capitalism, or, that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, look, if I had all the time in the world, guys, I'd be doing it, but I'm in the middle of some really big project, and I don't even get time for my big project because I'm also like trying to help out here on the farm. And that's been a lot, but it's been very rewarding. And so I'm kind of focusing on that. But stay tuned. There will be lots of really great stuff on that when I get around to it. So I do appreciate these kinds of comments because they definitely do stick in my head, and I have to think about it some more. And I've got some great responses coming soon. But with that, I'm just going to say, David, would be happy to talk to you about this more. Tony, same. I'd love to talk, all three of us. I think it'd be great. We've all got great channels doing good work. And, at the end of the day, we might disagree on this. I'll even disagree with Tony on it in my own ways, probably. But that's just the nature of ideas and thinking about what matters. And I think that at the end of the day, David is trying to do a left fusionist approach, kind of like Daniel Tutt used to try to do, where, try to work with the abolish the family people, try to work with the poly people, try to work with the, you try to work with everybody who's remotely left in the progressive sense, but also anti-capitalist. And I just I don't really care about that. I'll work with libertarians. I'll work with, trad Catholics. I'll work with, I don't care. I'll work with anybody who gets that time energy is the most important thing, and that no existing political formation or organization really has a monopoly on truth, and that something new must come. And that the work we're doing here is ultimately all about that. It's about doing the work to lay the ground for something much more important that'll allow people to work outside of the niches of the post-class fractured mass, and hopefully, tend and cultivate the cultural and material conditions for a rich kind of flourishing that will go beyond not just capitalism, but also this bureaucratic socialism, which is not the way. All right, folks, thank you so much, and take care. Yeah, it was really good catching up with you all. Bye.
Subscribers get access to all past courses at Theory Underground, as well as ongoing courses taught by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Nina Power. Subscribers also get access to monthly research seminars, and the higher tiers of involvement unlock discussions and one-on-one small group tutelage. So if you're like me and you're never a huge bookish kind of person, but somewhere along the way you got really into listening to educational materials, if you got really into listening to podcasts and then books at work, if you love going deep into ideas, but you're just not a traditional bookish kind of person, well, this is where the alliance between people like us and people who are more bookish and specialized are able to meet, to work through these things, and do so in defense of the human, in defense of our dignity, in defense of our common humanity and our intellectual integrity. This is not a place where we're going to kick you out because you're pro-life or pro-choice, or where you are an atheist or a agnostic or a Christian. But it is a place where you're expected to love one another regardless of such things, and to show up for people in your actual IRL real life communities regardless of such things. And if that is exciting for you, and if you're excited to learn about what this approach, this method, this school of thought has to offer, then I'm excited to meet you. Subscribe today.